All right, Mo, I'm excited. Today we have Francois Bargel, and we're our first international guest from France. And Francois, I appreciate you being on, sir.
Thank you. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
No, I'm very excited. Do you mind just what you do currently, and just to kind of set up what we're going to be getting into?
Okay. Right now, I've been appointed on January as the deputy director for the Hero Department district. So basically, I'm in charge of 1,800 cops. I'm in charge of deputy director. So I got director. And right now, I'm in charge of 3 big cities, mainly Montpellier, which is biggest city in France. So I'm in charge of the whole police department. And as a deputy director of the Hero department, I'm also in charge of supervising 3 big cities like Sète, Agde, and Béziers, which are cities around 30,000 people each.
Wow.
And basically, for Montpellier, that's the city itself, it's 300,000 people.
Okay. So ERO, is that the agency, or what agency is it?
So basically in France, that's quite different from the US. You got 3 types of police forces. You got the national police forces. You got the national gendarmerie, which is the military police. And basically military police, it's the police for the countryside. That's little towns, little villages under 15,000 people. And you got the local police, which is the mayor's police. And this police is not a judicial police force. They are mainly beat cops, but they have no judiciary power. They cannot investigate at all. And the mayor can choose whether or not they are armed. So sometimes there is not even a local police. That's the mayor house which decides. Me, I'm from national police. As national police, that's 175,000 men throughout France.
Wow.
And with all the specialties, you got public order, you got judiciary, you got intelligence, you got the SWAT team, that's the red unit. I don't know if you have heard about it. You got close protection units, and that's a very highly centralized state, France. So each, the national police is divided into directorates for each specialty, and France is divided into 100 districts. And one district, my district, is the Hero district. Hero is the name of a big river inside this district. That's where the name come from.
Perfect. No, I appreciate you setting that up. It's very different than how we do it in the US, but I appreciate that, just kind of setting up why who you are, why we're talking to you. But I'm going to go a little bit back and forth, but can we just talk about how you grew up, what got you interested into law enforcement for your career path?
So basically, I come from a little village next to the second biggest city in France, which name is Lyon. That's in southeastern France. That's the most beautiful city in the world. So if you want to visit it, that's great. And
I have been there. It's beautiful.
Yeah. Oh, really? That's really nice.
Oh, yeah.
And I mean, you can. There is a lot of history, a lot of food, and that's perfect. There are a lot of American students going there too. And basically, I was living in a little village. When I was young, I wanted to join the military or the police forces or become a history teacher.
Oh.
Basically, basically it was I was good at school. So I just went up, and during my childhood, my best friend's father was a beat cop. He was in the public order units. And I mean, he was kind of a hero to me. When he was coming back from work, I was just asking him if he had, arrested bad people. And he said, yes, that's my job. And, for me, it was awesome. I got some military guy in my family that were in the paratroopers units. And one of them joined the military police, the national gendarmerie that I was describing. Because in France, once you are in the military, you can join the military police after that quite easily. So I knew that the national gendarmerie was something, but growing up, I just decided that, working in the countryside was not for me because there are not enough suspense, not enough,
I understand.
Conflicts.
Yeah.
For the military people, my great-grandfather was, I got a lot of history with the military. My grandfather was a veteran from Indochina, and my other grandfather was a major. So I knew the military, but for me, it was kind of obvious that the fight was not abroad. It was inside at home. And if you were not able to maintain peace at home, there was no point trying to get in the military and going abroad. And that's why I decided to join the national police, and mainly also not to do the same thing as my grand.
No, that's an excellent point, though. That is an excellent point.
That's kind of funny because, in France, the special military school, like your West Point, the name is Saint-Cyr l'École. And the National Special Police School is also at Saint-Cyr. There are the two special military and police schools are in a town whose name is Saint-Cyr. And all my family says we have done the real Saint-Cyr and you have done the fake one.
Okay. Well, I wanted to ask you that because so the National Police Academy, you're saying that's equivalent, just so perspective for the U.S., it's like a West Point for cops in France. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, definitely.
See, that's amazing. We don't have anything like that here.
We have nothing like that here.
It's a really good idea.
And that's really different from the US, but that's kind of really interesting too. Basically, in France, for the national police, you got three types of cops. You got the beat cops, so that's the troopers, and they can go from troopers to NCOs, kind of. And then you got the officers, so that's from the rank of lieutenant to commander. And then you got what we call police commissioners, but that's not the same thing as in the US. That's the chiefs. And the chiefs, they start chief, then they become police commissioner, and then they become what we call contrôleur général, which is 2-star general.
And this is in law enforcement.
That's law enforcement. And then some of them can become 3 stars and 4 stars, but that's very for the guys that are in Paris in the directorate. But basically in France, you can start a beat cop, and through hard work, through national competitive exams, you can take the exam and become an officer, and then you can become police chief through hard work and a national competitive exam. And in France, there is a huge upward mobility within the police force. Basically, 50% of the officers, of the lieutenants, are coming from the troopers, and 50% of the chiefs are coming from either the troopers or the officers. But the other 50% comes from universities.
Okay, so you go from university. Okay, I'm understanding.
And that's my case.
Does everybody who wants to be a cop have to go through the National Police Academy, or is that just for people who want to be chiefs or above?
Oh, basically in France, as I told you, that's highly centralized. So there is one national competitive exam every year. Guys just try to take it. And if they pass it, they just join if they want to be beat cops, they start 1.5 years training. We got something like 9 schools for troopers throughout France. And for the officers, they got to have a bachelor degree, and they take the national competitive exam. And there is one school in France near Paris, and every lieutenant goes there. And they got a 2 years program. And then there is the chiefs like me. They have to have a master degree, and they take the national competitive exams. And then they go for a 2 years program near Lyon at Saint-Cyr.
Just so that I can understand this, you take the competitive exam and they pick you to be the chief, and now you go to a 2-year program in order to train then to be a chief before you get assigned anywhere?
Yeah, definitely. And this training program is part-time on the job, basically, the beat cop, and part-time at the school when we train for, management, law enforcement, this kind of stuff.
No,
so
that's
interesting.
Yeah.
And
I wish we had that here.
And basically that's
very interesting because I'm a trainer. I teach in our basic academy, but I can tell you with our supervisors here, as they get promoted through, the class is 40 hours long, and then they get assigned to their permanent assignment, and that's it.
Yeah, they get like 1 week.
Okay. Yeah, that's a difficult way of doing things.
Yes.
I would say so.
Yeah.
You don't always get the best leaders because they haven't been trained to be good leaders. I mean, that's the reality of it.
Yeah, I'm all for training. That's a real part of my career. trying to train my guys so they can be operational. And for us in France, there is this highly centralized, highly detailed training program, and that's a good thing, I think.
Yeah.
If you do that, you can have bad leaders because they are not made for it.
Yeah.
At my school, during my training session, we were something like 60. 30 of them were former officers. 30 of them were students like me, coming right from university. What I found really interesting is that some of the police officers were not good leaders. They didn't feel it. And there were some students that were clearly not made for the job as cops, but most of them, through the training, managed to become efficient.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, big fan. You're talking to two people who advocate for training a lot, and it's something that is lacking on the U.S. side. But I want to touch on real quick, because we're getting into a lot of good stuff, but I wanted to touch on, you spent a year in the U.S. is this the University of Virginia, and for criminology, you came to the U.S.?
Yeah. So it has been fantastic. I really enjoyed it. And it really helped me out throughout my careers, and even to take the national competitive exam. Basically, in France, that's not the same thing as in the US. Public education is free. That's free school. And you pay something like 700 euros a year to be in a really good university. And there is the regular universities, and there is the kind of Ivy League university, which is called Sciences Po. That's for political sciences. And in France, there are 9 political sciences universities. You get through a national competitive exam, you join, and most of the people that are ruling France, like politicians, like judges, like police commissioners, like military guys, like private sector, business, and all that stuff, they are coming from these universities. So I just joined because I was good at school. I took the national competitive exam. During my 3rd year, I was sent to the US because we got, an exchange program. I was I could go anywhere. And I said, what's the most competitive thing? They said to me that it was the US. So I took the competitive exam. I got in, and I could go to UPenn. I could go to UCLA, and I chose UVA because there was this criminology classes. And there was also a really funny class about international relations in the Middle East and the history of intelligence services. And there was this guy from CIA who was, telling secrets and all that stuff. It was a lot of fun.
That sounds fun.
And I really enjoyed being in the US, and especially because of the GI Bill. I met some guys that were coming back from Iraq.
Wow.
There was the ROTC, the Reserve Officer Training Center at UVA. And so I just joined them because I wanted to be a cop. I told them that I wanted to speak with them. And one of them was coming back from Iraq, from Fallujah. And they told me,
wow.
hey, you are going to be a cop in France? And I said, yeah, I'm going to be a cop. And he said, if by any chance you have to search a mosque, beware of the dogs, because if you came with dogs, you're going to have a riot, because dogs are impure in the Muslim community. And, it stayed in my mind. And during the state of emergency back in France in 2015, I was ordered to search a mosque, and it came back to me. And I just came with the dogs. I hid them in a car. I evacuated everybody. And the dogs went from the back, so nobody saw it. And like that, I had no issue with the Muslim community. We didn't find anything, so it was great. But it really helped me out, this memory from this guy who was coming back from Fallujah. And the same thing happened to me when I was my first appointment. I was appointed at my first job in Montpellier. I was in charge of all the public order units. And we had a bomb during the Christmas Eve in a club, a real bomb with the C4 and all that stuff. And this guy, we managed to defuse it. And when I arrived, my guys were not, they were not from the military. They were regular beat cops from a southern city in France. And the first thing I said, guys, we have found one bomb. Let's search for the other one, which is intended to kill us, to kill the cops, the medics and all that stuff. And the guys from my team, they were looking at me like if I was a madman, because it was not something that they envisioned, because they had no clue that it could happen. And with this discussions that I had with Marines, with GIs and all that stuff, I knew that it could happen. And it helped me out.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And there's so much going on. I'm taking notes while you're talking, but being able to share that kind of knowledge and then listening to you apply it to the actual job. This is why I kind of started this show, just kind of getting the information out. But to hear you, you took this from when you were in college to I don't know how long afterwards, and you remembered, because a lot of people think the cops just want to roll in and just steamroll stuff and they don't care how people react. But that's not true. You're trying to keep the peace and do it as safe as possible. And through these little tidbits of knowledge that you collected, you were like, okay, hey, this is how we'll do it. So we'll stay safe. 2, we're not going to piss off an entire community of people, and you had a successful outcome.
Yeah, and it was really intense for us, a state of emergency after the terrorist attacks. Mm-hmm. Most of the cops were not aware that dogs were an issue in a mosque.
Yeah.
And this background from UVA, from the political science university, helped me.
That makes me happy to hear that that's how it's going on. But I don't want to jump over this because it's in this section, but
very cool program.
When you're doing all of this, when did you have time to get a black belt in judo and be a regional champion? You kind of threw that in there, but I'm like, when did you have time to do this with all the other stuff you had going on?
So basically, I just started judo as a 5-year-old. And
oh, wow. Okay.
And I really liked fighting. It's part of my personality. I don't refrain from going into a fight if it's just, and that's maybe why I became a cop, because when something is unfair, we have to react. We have to do something.
Yeah, for sure.
But I had a great teacher, and he was really into national competitions and all that stuff. He was a former European champion, and he just took me under his wing. And I started to become strong after 10 years of judo. I had a really good team, and we managed to be regional champion. We went to the French national championship. We didn't win, but anyway, it was a lot of fun. It helped me out quite a lot when I was patrolling with my guides, because when I was a young police chief, I was doing my day-to-day work, doing administrative stuff, and that's a PM. I was calling a patrol, and I was patrolling with them from 6 to 2 a.m. in the morning. And then I started back at 8. And being good at judo, it helps to handcuff people and to go, when you grab them on the ground, people don't like to be on the ground. If people fall, when they fell, they are kind of afraid. And if I'm on the ground with them, I can easily subdue them. So,
no, for sure. And that's something else I've been talking about is being able, I'm not saying you got to be a black belt, but being able to have confidence in yourself for the, judo, jiu-jitsu, Muay Thai, whatever it is, some sort of skill set. It makes you more confident when you're approaching people, especially criminals and law enforcement is what I'm talking about. When I'm trying to explain this to people, it's like, it's not so that you can hurt them. It's that so you're not so quick to go to your weapons or your taser or pepper spray. You feel confident in calming things down. And if something happens, you can react. And then you're doing it in a way that you've been trained. So you're not going to hurt them either. See, that's the other part. When you're just trying to use your weight or muscle somebody, that's when the officer can get hurt, but you can also hurt the bad guy, right? Because you're not trying to necessarily hurt them unless they need it, I guess. But it's the untrained beat cop or whoever's on the street that's when you start seeing people get in trouble, or if they're scared because they don't know how to defend themselves.
Yeah, definitely.
I have a question for you in regards to that, because I know here in the States, we have specific defensive tactics training that we put our officers through. And I happen to be a defensive tactics instructor, and we have to tell people, if you have experience in boxing or, whatever your outside experience, we are very quick to tell them, be careful with using it because of the liability. And if you do something that we haven't taught you and you hurt somebody, this is something that you personally can get in trouble for. With you being part of the National Police, do they have a problem with you utilizing your skills in judo if it becomes a situation where you could use them?
Basically, in France, we don't have such a liability issue. People don't sue each other as often as in the US. Basically, there is like a citizen's arrest right in France. So basically, as cops, we have the same right as the citizens to intervene if something if something goes wrong, like if there is a crime committed, I got the same right as a cop, as any citizens, to apprehend and to grab the guy. So the thing is that the main idea in France is that you have to use proportionate force. So basically, if the guy comes end to end with you, if you go end to end and you are a boxer, there's no issue. If you are a judoka, there is no issue. If the guy comes with a baton, like a stick, you can grab your stick, you can have your taser, and if the guys come, they can kill you with an axe or this kind of stuff, you can use your firearm. But basically, the main idea is that if you are good at boxing, if the guys come swinging at you, if you just knock him out, there's no issue. That's okay.
Yeah,
I love it.
that's awesome.
The main issue, the only thing that I have to refrain myself from doing right now is that strangulations. I cannot strangle. Right now it's forbidden because there was a cop technique to strangle a guy to kind of soften him. Yeah. And we got some accidents. Some guys didn't make it at the end. And so right now we have no right to use strangulation. But when I was at the National School Police Academy, no issue. I was kind of doing whatever I wanted.
That's amazing. They actually taught strangulation holds. That's so great. It does work if you know how to do it right. It does work because it just takes the fight out of them.
For me,
not to kill them, but just to take the fight out.
Yeah, definitely. So right now they just invented a new technique which is not as good as strong.
Well, I was going to say they took those where we haven't been able to use that since like the 80s.
Yeah, they took away a long time ago.
Here in the U.S., everybody got sued for it. So
yeah,
that went away a long time ago.
But for us, that's something like 3 years ago.
Oh, that's what I like. I love learning this stuff. Yeah, I wouldn't have thought that. Let's talk a little bit. So we're going into your career side. Again, you kind of outlined it for us, but I want to dig into it just a little bit. Because in 2011, 2013, you were the deputy head of uniform division. So you were over the K9, the motorbikes, plainclothes, regular patrol, emergency judiciary. It's like that included 400 people total that encompassed all those specialties. So it's like a district then. So I'm trying to wrap my head around it and get a comparison with the emergency judiciary unit. What does that entail?
So basically that's a 24 hours working shift. And each time there is a crime, this team was doing the paperwork, booking criminals that were arrested on crime scenes, doing the forensic stuff, doing investigation during in the neighborhood. And so basically we call that emergency judiciary because if we didn't manage to wrap it up in 48 hours, we were giving the whole file to another unit which was doing long run investigation.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. It's like, yeah, okay. It's like a quick reaction team. They'll go in and do the 48-hour investigation, and then if it didn't come to fruition, they pass it on to someone who's doing it longer.
Either we can finish, or either way we give it to the teams that can do longer work, because we have to take whatever happens every day, 7 days.
Wow, okay. All right. Mo, anything on that? 'Cause I'm excited to get into the head of public order, because that's kind of when I came across this section for the French Secret Service, but we'll stick on this for a second.
Just had a quick question. So when you say they did all the paperwork, so I, as a beat cop, if I make an arrest, I hand that individual off to this unit and then they run with the entire case? Or is there any part that I have to do as the beat cop when I make the arrest?
So basically, if you are a beat cop, you don't, in France, the cops, the patrols, we are 3 or 2 within a patrol. We never patrol alone. So basically, when we arrest someone, you grab him, you bring him to the emergency judiciary unit. You said he has done the guy from the judiciary book him. Then you have to write your report for the arrest. You have to to bring him to the CSI so they can take his prints. You have to check if the guy is wanted, and if the guy is drunk, you have to bring him to the hospital so a doctor can say that he can stay in solitary in a jail at our police station. So you have to do that if you are a beat cop. And basically, sometimes you have to also since you are 3, sometimes you take a witness with you and you take a witness statement.
Okay. Actually, you just brought up a point. In France, are the jail cops the same as the beat cops? Like, is it the same agency or is that 2 different departments?
Oh, no. We got the cops in France. they do cops work. We don't do jail.
Who does the jail?
There is a penitentiary administration. So basically the jail, when the guy is convicted, we give it to the penitentiary administration, and the cops don't take care of that. For the 48 hours is detained during the investigations, that the cops that take it and deal with him in a small precinct cell.
So in the U.S., it's usually, well, in the States, the county, like the sheriff deputies, they run the jails, and they can either be jail deputies or they could be road deputies.
Okay.
It's usually one or the other. Sometimes there's some crossover, but very rarely. And then you have the federal system, and the federal system sounds more like what you're talking about, where they have the Bureau of Prisons, where that is its own career path. It's separate than, it's not the FBI, ATF, or anything like that. It's BOP, Bureau of Prisons. They run the prisons, but that's only on a federal side, nothing on a state or local. That's usually run by either the municipality or the sheriff deputy. So, I just wanted
to... Because in France, everything is centralized. So there is one national penitentiary administration. And basically, the guys that are in this administration, that's the guy who didn't manage to take the national competitive exam to become cops.
Okay, I see. Okay. I appreciate you clearing that up. So then we're going to go to 2013 and 2017. And I'm interested in this because you were the head of the public order unit in, hopefully I say this right, in Nice, France. That anti-riot and anti-crime. Could you describe what that is?
It was a lot of, I
like that.
So basically, I've been selected because when I was at my first job, the director just noticed that I was good at clamping down on demonstrators on this kind of stuff. So, and there was in France, sports, we got hooligans. That's real hooligans, like in Britain or this kind of stuff. And soccer games are really intense. So sometimes some people die because they stab each other, this kind of stuff. That's really intense. So the director in Nice noticed that I was good at policing such big events. So he made me come from Montpellier to Nice and gave me the unit. I got this unit. It was something like 300 people, but I was part of a much larger unit. I was deputy of a much larger unit. We were something like 700, but there were 300 guys that were just under my command. And there was a public order anti-riot unit, which is the guys that are, with shields, with gas, with batons, we got what we called engin lanceur d'eau, which is a cannon, water cannon. We got a lot of stuff. And in France, public order is a real specialty. In France, it can be really intense, and we will have the main idea in France for public order is that there will be no casualty in public order, because demonstration is a right, and intense demonstration is part of the French history. We will allow some things that you wouldn't even think about allowing in the US, in the sake of preserving life of demonstrators. But
can you explain?
So basically, sometimes you see demonstrations in France. You see guys that are burning cars, that are, trying to charge against the police forces. And there will be no French cop with an actual gun, shooting at people. That's not done. That's something you don't do in a demonstrations. In demonstrations, that's not something that you can do. In public order events, there is no way that a guy can decide whether or not he's doing something within the unit. So it's highly centralized. The chief says we will charge, and we will charge up until this roadblock. And if someone goes further, is fired, because everything is it's so intense that we cannot allow people to take any chances or to decide to arrest someone because they can be crushed by the demonstrators.
I see what you're saying.
That's the chief who decides whether or not we do arrests, whether or not we disperse the crowd, or whether or not we kind of surround the crowd.
Got it.
Only the chief who decides. And that's like a strategy game. And if you are good, everything goes well. And if you are bad, some people might be injured. So it's a real test for leadership. So that's the public order guys. We are doing a lot of riots in suburbs, because in France, that's the suburbs that are, crime-ridden communities. That's not like in the US.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And we were doing a lot of public order events like soccer games with a lot of, hooligans. And, in France, the hooligans, they just date. They said, yeah, let's fight. And they arrive with something like 5 buses. And they just get off the bus with baseball bats and this kind of stuff. And you might have people that can be really injured or even die.
Right.
So you have to
Yeah.
prevent these attacks.
So is this, are the anti-riot and are they dedicated to just that, or is it a dual duty? Like, are they beat cops and then when they're called, they go put on the riot gear, or this is all they do?
I mean, that's public order guys. That's their job. But if there is no riot, or if there is no, if there is no, not such a big thing, there is no soccer games, they can transfer, they can patrol like anti-crime units. They can,
Okay. All right.
they go and they search cars. They can go and within the suburbs trying to arrest drug dealers. They can do whatever they want if there is no public order duty.
Amazing. I see why you said it was fun.
Yeah. And
That sounds fun.
And that's really fun because these kind of units, because of the terrorist attacks, we got them to train as first responders with much more gear. Like we got class 4 bulletproof jackets, we got HK, GSAT, so we can train them on this too. So they can do public orders, they can be first responders to terrorist attacks, and they can do, regular beat cop stuff or trying to arrest drug dealers if they don't have training or if they don't have public order stuff to do.
Go ahead, Mo.
I was just going to say, like, it seems like that was a unit that had it would be a lot of fun because it was so highly specialized, but at the same time, they had a lot of latitude to be able to maneuver based on what kind of crimes they had going on, which was really interesting. You said they could even go out and just search cars. Do you guys have the same rules and the respect? And forgive my ignorance when it comes to, we search a car, we have to be able to completely explain why this is what led me to that person. We can't just go into an area, even if it is crime-ridden, drug-ridden, or what happened, just be like, I'm going to search these cars here. Can you guys, is that a little more limited for you guys, or do you guys have the latitude just because we know this is an area where drugs are, etc.?
So basically, it will allow me to explain you what is anti-crime units. That's plainclothes officers that are trained. Basically, you are a beat cop. If you want to join the plainclothes units, you have to take series of tests like psychological, physical, like shooting and all that stuff. And you also have to be able to write arrest reports. And there is a test about that. Because in France, basically, it's just like you guys. There is a rule of law and we cannot search people just on an inch. But you have to write it down properly. And if you write it down properly, you can find a way around to search or to be able to do your job. But there is one thing that we can do, which is really good. The judiciary, like in the US, independent, but they are not elected in France. That's a national judiciary that's like civil servants. And the DA, the district attorney in France,
right.
If the police chief asks for it, he can give you what we call requisition, which allows any cops to search anybody or any car in a limited time and in a specific area. And
like
so
that.
basically, that's something that is really good.
Yeah.
So when I was in Nice, I was asking something like 2 or 3 requisition a day, specifically to target some areas. And there is one rule also in France. You can, search people and control any people within 15 kilometers from an international train station. So,
Okay, that makes sense. It's like a border.
Yeah, but since most of the international train stations are in big cities, that's 15 kilometers within the city. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's very cool.
Area.
I'm tracking what you're putting down. I don't want to skip it, but you had mentioned earlier on red units. Is that involved in any of what you're talking about?
Oh, so the red units, that's the equivalent of the national SWAT team. That's part of the national unit. And the current boss is one of my former director. It's a good friend of mine. That's the guy who went into the Bataclan during the terrorist attack in 2015. And that's the guy where he was the plainclothes unit and he just shot a terrorist and he stopped the attack. So the guy is a huge hero. So I'm going back to the red unit. The red unit, It's a specialized unit in France. So there is one big unit in Paris, and they got everything from paratroopers, from scuba diving, from special assault and special entry within buildings, from drones, from assaults from the ground, from the sea. They can do whatever.
Let's go.
Yeah, I mean, they can do anything. So that's and they got nine satellites that are spread out in France. So there is one in Montpellier, there is one in Nice, there is one in Marseille. Each one of these satellites got 20 members units. So there is one commander and one NCO, and you got 2 9-guys team that are on full alert mode every second week. 1 week. And these guys, they got the same training as the guy in Paris. So that's a red unit in France. That's something like 600 people. And the National Gendarmerie got the same units and the same organization. It's called the GIGN.
Yeah, I know those. I think we worked with those on
and basically, for the Secret Service, when you got snipers from the French side, most of them are coming from GIGN or red unit.
Got it. Well, let's jump into that because that's what I wanted to touch on because I was there, when Trump has been there a few times. His first administration, I was in Paris and I was working with the French Secret Service. I was the Arc de Triomphe, right around that area. But so anyway, that was my first exposure to the French Secret Service. But let me understand. The French Secret Service, is that from the National Police that is a detail or is it its own thing? Like in the US, it's the United States Secret Service. That's its own department that you have to apply. That's all you do. You just work for them.
So basically the French Secret Service, it's called the Service de la Protection. So SDLP. It's part of the National Police. It's a full part of the National Police. And I spent 7 years working for SDLP, for the French Secret Service. And basically, you have to be seasoned cop to join. You have to take national competitive exams. And then you spend 6 weeks. The national competitive exam is quite long. It's a 1 week national competitive exam. Something like 27 different tests. And, they wake you up the night. They make you run in the night. They make you suffer.
Let's go.
And the main idea is that we try to see whether or not you are able to focus under stress and when you are exhausted. And we try to know if you are a good comrade. Because most of the time, you can have guys that are really good, that are really bulky, that are really strong, but they are not good comrades. And it doesn't work in units like the Secret Service. People that are self-centered, they cannot be good at what we do because the police work and Secret Service, that's a team sport.
No, for sure. Yeah.
So basically you do this 1 week training, tests, and then you got a 6-week training program. And then you start as a young close protection agent.
So you have it broken down as to 3 different jobs within the French Secret Service: organizing international summits, close protection of foreign dignitaries, and then at the end, the Prime Minister's close protection group. Is that so? In the United States, I'm a former Secret Service agent. We would do that. That's just part of your career. Like sometimes you're working for POTUS or VPOTUS and you're on the detail. And then other times you're working foreign heads of state doing that. Or other times you're setting up security for, whatever it is, Super Bowl, whatever, you kind of flow, but you're still within the Secret Service. Is it does that how it work in France?
So basically in France, it depends whether or not you are a police chief or if you are a beat cop.
Okay.
If you are a beat cop, you take the exams, you go through the training, and then you start doing protection for foreign dignitaries. And you do protection for judges or for, small details. And you start gaining experience. And from time to time, there is a police chief or there is a police officer that says, hey, I have to organize a summit. I will take you, and you, because you know nothing. And I will give you some tips so you can start understanding that close protection, that's not just being a really good shooter. That's not just being really fit. And that's we say in France, that's something like 90% of the job is organization and 10% is sheer luck and training.
You are 100% right. I tell people that all the time. We spent, when I was in training, shooting, physical fitness, and, learning and all this stuff. But when you get on the job, I'm like, the vast majority of the job is logistics, organizing everything for timing. And then, like you said, 10% of that's just, I hope it works out. It looks good on paper. We'll see what happens when it's game day.
And definitely, if you are using this 10% sheer luck or training, that you have not done your job properly. And we try to tell the young guys, because the young guys, they want to have the G36, they want to have the Ray-Bans and, show off a little bit. But that's not most of the guys that are looking for that. They will join red units or DIPN after something like 5 or 6 years in Secret Service, and they will go. They won't stay in the Secret Service. So basically, you start a young guy. Some police chiefs or some police officer take you for organizing stuff, and then you go back doing your regular details. And after 5 years, you can take another exam and take some classes to be able to apply to join the government protection. So there is
that's with the prime minister.
That's the prime minister. That's the presidential protection. That's the Ministry of Defense protection and Ministry of Interior protection and Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Justice. So that's the big 6. If you want to join the big 6, you have to take another exam and to show something for it. So
that's interesting. Yeah, that's different than how we do it in the U.S. You basically you're going whether you want to or not. It's not seen as something to strive for, to be honest with you, because it's usually a strain on your life. I'm assuming when you're on the government protection, you're traveling with them, you're doing all of that. Is that
definitely
correct? Yes. Yeah. And so you're saying you got to do once you're in the French Secret Service, you have to be there for 5 years and then take another test, pass all this stuff in order to get onto the government protection.
And if you want to stay, you have to take it every 3 years. You have to retake the exam.
So
are the
in order to stay in government protection.
Wow. Okay.
See, that's a very different outlook. The Secret Service,
you got more money inside it when you do the government.
Got it. Well, as you should, because you're basically living their life.
Yeah, definitely.
Right? Yeah.
So I'm hearing you when you're talking about as you've moved through your career from the very beginning until this point that we've gotten to. Every stage, there's some type of test. When you refer to this test, is it only written or is there scenario testing or is it just, can you give me a little bit more of an explanation about that?
So the tests, there is physical tests, there is psychological tests, there is scenario-based tests on management, on police actions too. There is, for example, there is IT tests, there is English tests for the Secret Service, there is driving skills tests. There is swimming test too. There are a lot of, scenario based trainings to show and to know how they react when they don't do really well in the test. That's also a sign if the guy is not able to reflect on a failure. It's a sign that he's not good for us. So there are a lot of things like that. And before it was much more physical tests. And right now we are much more based on personality and scenario based.
Okay. Scenario based. Yeah. A lot of people are going to that.
Very interesting.
I want to get to a couple other things, but can you touch on, as you said, while you were in the French Secret Service, that's when the Nice terror attacks occurred. Could you just kind of summarize those for people who maybe were not aware?
So basically, I was not in the French Secret Service at that time. I was in the public order unit.
Sorry, I mixed the two. I apologize.
Okay, no. And basically, what happened is that there was a firework on 14th of July. That's like 4th of July for you guys. So there was a huge firework. We did block the roads on the seaside. And there was a guy who went through the crowd with a big truck, but he attacked really, really far from the area that was restricted. There was no event when he started to ram people. He was ramming people on the sidewalk.
Okay.
But it was not people that were not looking at the fireworks because this area was restricted and the cops were holding it. And basically, the local cops didn't manage to stop the truck when they saw it. and that my guys that stopped the truck less than a minute from the point they were holding, and in less than 250 meters. They shot 81 shots. There were something like 8 shooters, and the guy was shot dead inside the truck, but he managed to kill 86 people. It was a nightmare, and we had to secure something like 2 kilometers of crime scenes to make sure that there was no explosive devices. And the military forces in France are in the street with us in a counter-terrorism program, which is called Sentinelle or Vigipirate. And we got the French police and the military are pretty close because the military patrols in areas that the cops tell them to go. And during this event, we did work alongside together. They were really helpful. They managed to secure, the medical area where we managed to bring the wounded, and it helped us to take people to search and try to see if there were not other shooters, because the guy did try to shoot us. He was, driving and shooting to my guys too. Then, voilà. So it was really difficult.
Yeah.
It has been the longest night of my life.
No, I can imagine. And I think this ties into my next question or tie-in, but in France, does the law enforcement work with the military? And if so, were they asked to join in on this investigation? Or how does that work, that relationship?
So basically,
with something like a terrorist attack. Yeah.
Basically, in France, the military has no right to intervene in public order stuff.
Oh, okay.
They don't do demonstrations or this kind of stuff. That's forbidden. But since 1990, there has been a lot of terror attacks, and to help the police and the national gendarmerie, the government decided to have 7,000 force. 7,000 men are right now deployed in France to do patrols, and they do patrols in city centers, and they protect synagogues, they protect mosques, and they secure train stations. But they have no judicial power. But as I told you, since in France there is no special right for the cops to arrest, when they are on patrols, they can arrest someone just like any citizens or just like me. If there is a crime. So normally they don't try to arrest people. They are here to, deter people from doing bad things. And it was quite helpful during the Nice attack to help us to secure some areas where the wounded were gathered, for example. But for example, during the Bataclan attack in 2015, they were highly criticized because they didn't went inside the Bataclan because they didn't have the order to get in.
Okay.
So that's why
that's what I was wondering, because I read
less armed. The cops were had less weapons. And right now, the Red Unit Commander, the National Red Unit Commander, just went with his pistol because he had no assault rifle, and he just went in and he shot the guy who was, was trying to shoot someone with a Kalashnikov, and he stopped the attack. Outside the Bataclan, there were military personnel who didn't receive the order to get in, and they were stuck because the order didn't came, and they were with assault rifles with some stuff that we could have used, but we couldn't move. After this event, they changed the rules of engagement. They changed the rules for the military. Now, if something like that happens, they would, under the police control, get in.
Yeah, so I guess that's what I was looking for, because I was reading up on it, and thank you for clarifying, because it's since the heightened level of terrorist attacks or threats, I'll say it that way, in France, Mo, just that they've started working along. I mean, I think you outlined it, but working alongside the military to be able to help prevent, deter. I didn't realize the guy had gone in there with just a handgun while that guy had a AK Kalashnikov. That's wild.
Wow. And and when you talk to this guy, he's just so humble. He just says, "Yeah, I've done what I could do," and he's even criticizing. He said, "Maybe I should have put my gun in single action instead of double action." He's amazing. He's amazing.
I think you did fine, sir.
Yeah, you did just fine. Yeah, that's amazing. But yeah, I definitely wanted to touch on that. And the other one I want to touch on, you had on the Secret Service stories with Trump, Putin, and the G7, because I think I was there for the Trump one. This is where the girls flashed his motorcade.
Yeah. So for this event, I was in charge of organizing the whole events, and
Yeah.
it was the anniversary of 1918 armistice, like the end of World
Yes.
War II, World War One.
Yeah.
Sorry. And so everybody was here. There was Trump, there was Putin, there was the Israelis, the British. Everybody was there, and it was up at the Champs-Élysées on the Arc de Triomphe, and we just,
Yep.
everything was secured 100%. We just, and in France there is the Femen movement, so that's women that flash their boobs to protest against whatever they want, and they're from Russia originally, but they are something like refugees in France, and they always try to fuck the thing up. And it was my first big event in which I was really in charge, and I secured everything. Everything was scrubbed up from 6 a.m. in the morning. And what is funny is that you maybe don't know is that we just stopped one of these girl that she managed to, with the help of one journalist, she swapped passes, and she was trying to get inside the Arc de Triomphe alongside the US president. And we managed to discover that because one guy from the military communication department said, I know the name on her pass, and that's not her. And that otherwise she would have managed to slip through our fingers. And we just took her and we take her out. But it was something like 3 hours before the head of states were coming. But we managed to secure that, and we made a round trip to make sure there was no other. It was double shift attack. Basically, they tried to flash their boobs alongside the motorcade, just next to the reporters. And there was one girl, all the national gendarmerie guys jumped on her, and there was 2 others that went further because they waited for all the national gendarmerie guys to get on the first one. And we managed to prevent them from, flashing their boobs to Mr. Trump.
Yeah, I know one of the guys that was on the detail in the motorcade, and I guess most of them missed it. They were like, damn it, we missed it. What I will say, in Paris, you get boobs flashed at you. In America, you go to San Francisco and you get something else flashed at you that you don't want to see. So it's one or the other, I guess. But if you had to pick one, I just wanted to touch on that because I was there for that one.
Yeah, and after that, for the G7 in Biarritz, I was in charge of the whole organization, and it has been huge. I spent something like 1 year organizing it.
Yeah.
Which was really fun is that at one time we got the mystery guest. Everybody. There was a lot of head of states, and I received a call from the president chief of staff saying, Francois, you got one spare team. I said, yeah, of course I got spare teams. You need to send one team at the airport. And I said, yes, that's for a mystery guest. And he said, yes, that's a mystery guest. And I said, who is it? Who is it? And it was Iranian Minister of Foreign Affairs that was coming to speak to Mr. Trump, Mr. Macron, and all that stuff. And the guys said, guys, we are going to protect the Iranian Minister of Foreign Affairs, so don't fuck it up.
Yeah, don't. Yeah. Let me ask you this, because I never had to work, we call them NSSEs, what you're talking about, like a G7. I never had to do one like what you're talking about. I've had to do sites and for visits, so to speak. But how is it working with all those different heads of state and their staff? Because in the U.S., I could tell you, we typically on the Secret Service side hated working with the staff. They were usually way worse than the actual protectee.
Yeah,
the protectee would usually be cool, very nice, professional, but the staffers made everything worse.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And the main idea is that we try to delegate the staff to the French protocol, and the French protocol tries to not to do it. So that's
nobody wants to deal with them.
Yeah, no one wants to deal with the staff. But to be honest, during the G7, it was not a big issue because everything was so tight, and Biarritz is a small city and it's a small venue. So we had a lot of bargaining at the beginning because the American people, they wanted twice the same size as everybody.
Of course.
And they quite managed to have it. But during the bargaining process, it was a lot of discussion. But during the real summit, that's either way you had a badge or you had no badge. If you have no badge, you were just thrown out by the guy from the security.
Yeah, good.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this. And then, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, it was really like that. Basically, there was the Egyptian president, Marshal al-Sisi, and Marshal al-Sisi, I already had, I did protected him before. And so the guys were, yeah, Francois, we know each other. We want 50 people more. I said, yeah, there's no use trying to do that. I'm not giving badges, so just forget about it.
Let me ask before we move on to the next one, but what was, when you were traveling with the Prime Minister, what was, I'll phrase it nicely, but maybe the most remote or rural country you ever went to? Like for me, it would either be Da Nang, Vietnam, which was an amazing experience, but that's when I saw real poverty where people were living in like dirt floors and huts. And I was staying in a 4-star resort across the street. We could see them coming in. But did you travel like that with the Prime Minister to all over the world, or what was that like for you?
So basically in France, most of the foreign affairs is dealt by the French president. So the Prime Minister does sometimes he does international affairs, but that's much more difficult. So I've done some work abroad. I went to Canada, I went to Italy, I went to some European countries. We went to Algeria, but in terms of remote areas or like place with shanty towns and this kind of stuff, we didn't see it abroad. We did see it in our overseas territories, like in French Guiana. There are a lot of shanty towns with Brazilian refugees.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And it's it's a really crime-ridden area because of the Brazilian asylum seekers and gold seekers in French Guiana. So that's the part of France where the homicide rate is the highest.
Okay. All right. And I want to be respectful of time. Two more things I wanted to talk about. I'm sorry. We've already been talking for over an hour, which I knew it was going to go. It's just, I really appreciate your time, but I wanted to touch on something because I love the quote. It's about, is law enforcement in France respected, like a respected profession? In the US, there's been a lot. I mean, it's been highs and lows, but right now I think respectfully, it's at a low. A lot of people do not respect law enforcement. They're openly attacking, talk about defunding them, all these other things. And you wrote this. It says, in France, the relation to the police is the embodiment of the relation to the state. We want it all, but we criticize everything along the way. Can you expound on that? I love it.
Yeah, basically, that's a quote from a French sociology teacher. And at first, it speaks about the prefect. The prefect in France, that's the guy who embodies the state at district level. So I told you, France is divided in 101 districts. Each district has its prefect. But that's true that in France, people don't like authority. They don't like to be told what they have to do. And people like to demonstrate. At first, when you see a cop in the street, when you are not a family member of the cops, you are kind of, you like them, but you don't really want to interact with them because you don't know if they are going to tell you something that you don't want to do.
Yeah, fair enough.
And that's a kind of mixed hate and love relationship, which is quite common in the French population. But there is also one thing I told you. There is a stereotypes dictionary, which has been published in 1911 or 1901. And the guy, Gustave Flaubert, the author, just said, police, always wrong.
Always wrong.
Always wrong. And that's something that is quite common in the mindset, in the French mindset. But when that's kind of the way we are. But what is, when you analyze it, you see that in France, the national police intervenes every 4 seconds. Every 4 seconds, there is a police intervention. And these police interventions, they come from the 911 calls. And the French people, they do call 911. That's the 17 in France, 17 number. Basically, if people really didn't like the police, they wouldn't call. So if there is a call,
fair enough.
And basically, after the attacks, the terror attacks in Paris and in Nice, there was a huge love for the police forces because people realized that we were there to protect them. And there was a huge sense of duty and honor towards the police forces. And there was a huge bump in the applications to join, either in the police or the military. And the guys that were 15 years old and 15, they joined like one man for the military, for the police, for the national gendarmerie. So I think that people do respect more the police than before 2015.
I think that goes in line kind of with us a little bit in the middle here in the United States, because when something awful happens, we do see that uptick. After 9/11, everybody was super patriotic, wanted to join the military, wanted to be part of that public service arm. And then we've had other things like the George Floyd and some of the other things that have occurred that are wrong in the eyes of law enforcement, but that have really kind of brought things down. Something I find interesting that you said along the... Go ahead.
Same thing for us. I told you that there was one strangulation incident which has been really publicized, and it shook the public's idea about the police forces.
I see. It's interesting. One of the things you were saying is the quote that people say that law enforcement's always wrong, that it is part of your culture to demonstrate, and that there's even lines that as law enforcement officers you guys won't do. You won't cross during demonstrations. But then the other thing I found interesting is the correlation to when I asked you about the liability question. You said, oh, no, we don't do that. Oh, people look at law enforcement as being always wrong. We're allowed to demonstrate, but we're not going to sue them. That's not something that we do. Whereas we have a very different culture here in America.
Yeah, we have a sue culture. Sue everybody.
Yeah, definitely. And I can tell from my experience in the US when I was a student, I was really, astonished by the way things, the relationship between the state, between the people, were judiciary or judicial.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Francois, that's all I got for you. I don't want to take you too much longer. We've almost an hour and a half, so I really appreciate it. Is there anything you want to leave with, or anything we didn't touch on that you'd like to get out there?
If by any chance there are French people listening, they can come and join the police forces. We need people. And if by any chance people from the US or from law enforcement, from every agency want to come and visit and train with the French police, I can make things happen. I still got some contacts, and we love to train together, to exchange things, because that's the way we become stronger.
No, absolutely. I'm a big proponent of that. And we used to do it a lot back in the 80s and 90s from what I've learned, again, before my time. I mean, it sounds like, right, we don't really do that as much anymore as far as like go international training with law enforcement. It's not as popular as it used to be, unfortunately.
Yeah. So thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you, Francois. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your time, sir. We appreciate it.